What's up, guys? Richard here, back with Cosmic Human Design, and with another Cosmic I Ching Hexagram video. And I'm going to really try and make these videos a lot shorter than they have been. I think that's probably a reason not as many people have been watching them, because they're just too long. So I'm just going to try and get through this reading very quickly and yeah, try and limit my rambling, I suppose. All right, let's start here. Hexagram 4, Youthful Folly. Youthful Folly. Kin over con, or mountain over water. The judgment. Youthful folly has success. It is not I who seeks the young fool. The young fool seeks me. At the first oracle, I inform him. If he asks 2 or 3 times, it is importunity. If he importunes, I give him no information. It does not further to persevere. In this hexagram, the sage defines the relationship between itself and the person who consults the oracle. It says to him that if his attitude is modest and unassuming, it will come to help him and answer his questions. It will not withhold any answer so long as he has this attitude. This message is echoed in hexagram 48, the well, line 6. One draws from the well without hindrance. It is dependable, supreme good fortune. The title, Youthful Folly, points either to the different ways in which the ego in a person is approaching the oracle, or it indicates that the questioner is inexperienced in seeing the matter of concern from the cosmic viewpoint. The words, it is not I who seeks the young fool seeks me, is an indication that it is the ego that is approaching rather than the person's true self. It does not further to persevere, informs him that after having received this hexagram as a rebuff to the ego, the sage has retreated. Thereafter, the messages either will not make sense or they're only telling the person what the ego wants to hear. If the RTCM, the retrospective 3-coin method, confirms that this is the message intended, the person needs to refrain from consulting the I Ching until he has disallowed the presumptuous attitude. The ego approaches the oracle with the idea that it is a mechanical device or one of a number of modalities it can use in the hope of attaining success. It also approaches in the hope of gaining knowledge that will give it power, or in the expectation to be confirmed and supported in its beliefs, or in the expectation that the sage will speak in the ego's language, or inform it of the truth in one sentence. It is also the ego that approaches the oracle in an attitude of disbelief and in a presumptuous and arrogant attitude in which it expects the sage to prove itself. Or it approaches an idle curiosity to know with the mind what the I Ching is. In other instances of youthful folly, the person approaches the oracle servilely, hoping that by looking up to the sage as a higher authority or guru, he will win advantages and help to gain what the ego in him wants. This motive is also behind his turning his responsibility to govern himself over to the oracle. In all the above instances, the ego is trying to appropriate the book to impress the sage into serving ego purposes, something the sage does not allow. One purpose of this hexagram is thus to show the fraudulent nature of the ego and to inform the person that he is allowing the ego rather than his true self to approach the oracle. Youthful Folly Has Success speaks of the different ways the sage relates to the ego and its wrong motives. These different ways are described in the lines. This hexagram also addresses the mistaken idea typical of newcomers to the oracle that they're only consulting a book. They tend to take the text literally or symbolically as referring to fixed situations, and therefore do not understand that its messages are given in the language of metaphors, the meanings of which are variable, depending on the circumstance. When taken as metaphors, they make possible new insights that deepen our understanding, rather than being just an iteration of fixed ancient truths. The sage makes it clear in line 2 that it tolerates mistaken beliefs for a while. That's when a person expects that the sage is a higher power, but it does not support such ideas in the long run. The sage regards itself, as do all the invisible helping aspects of the cosmic consciousness, as equal to all the other aspects of the cosmos. This includes humans, animals, plant life, the earth, and indeed all the things of existence. The sage acts to support our suppressed inner truth until we develop the confidence needed to reclaim our true natures through learning the true way of the cosmos. However, it never acts in the way we might expect of an all-powerful God, to intervene powerfully in our affairs or to make deals with us. To correct any of the above mentioned ego attitudes that separate a person from approaching the sage with modesty, he needs to say the inner no to the mistaken views that are behind such attitudes. Youthful Folly is also about the follies of the collective ego. Among them are the exalting of what is old, the exalting of what is believed to be powerful, the belief that humans are the center of the universe, that great achievements are due to human genius, that might makes right, that winning is the important thing, that humans are superior to other creatures due to their large brains, that the collective ego knows what is best, what is good for the whole, etc. All right, and then on to the lines. Line 1. To make a fool develop, it furthers to apply discipline. The fetters should be removed. To go on in this way brings humiliation. The person to whom this line applies has been disciplined by the sage and the helpers to their withdrawal. They have left him to his own devices to suffer the consequences. Due to his having been humbled, it informs him that the fetters have been removed. However, if he allows the ego to return as before, it will bring further humiliation. This line can also refer to the ego in a person having openly disciplined another by putting poison arrows of blame and spells of guilt on him. These are fetters that need to be removed because they create hatred and vindictiveness in the one blamed. Because it's not correct to openly discipline another, the sage puts the fetters of discipline mentioned above on the person who does this. This line shows the correct way to respond to the ego in another by saying the inner no and then turning the matter over to the sage. The person then keeps his heart neutral and firmly resists allowing the ego to attach itself to justified anger. See Hexagram 26, Attaining Power of the Great, for an explanation of how the energy of anger is transformed. He also resists allowing the ego to brand the other person as a culprit, for all branding keeps the interaction between egos active. Retaining neutrality and reserve engages the helpers to apply whatever discipline is necessary to correct the situation. A person may also receive this line when he possesses the mistaken belief that the mind ought to control the body. Such beliefs put spells on his wholeness and disable the helper of transformation that renews his chi energy. These spells are fetters, which manifest in the form of health problems created by the lack or obstruction of chi energy. The health problems bring the humiliation mentioned in the line, returning the person to his senses. Phrases that form such spells put the mind over the body and demand that one's lower/animal nature needs to be punished or overcome. The images associated with these phrases also need to be deprogrammed. Line 2, to bear with fools and kindliness brings good fortune. To know how to take woman brings good fortune. The son is capable of taking charge of the household. To bear with fools and kindliness has to do with the sages tolerating for a certain length of time misconceptions and mistaken beliefs held by those who approach it. It takes into account the person's ignorance of how to relate to the sage. It also takes into account his fears of leaving behind the beliefs he has adopted from the collective ego and helps him to free himself of them. This is the good fortune mentioned. The sage retreats, however, if or when the person falls back onto his old beliefs or attains the practices connected with them. The sage also acknowledges that the person does not immediately know how to apply what he has learned, and that he will make mistakes, as mistakes are part of his learning process, for which there is no blame. To know how to take women brings good fortune is an incorrect phrase that comes from the Chinese custom of looking down on the female while at the same time using her. It is used here as well as a metaphor for times when a person allows the ego to condescendingly question the sage's counsel because it does not fit its egotistical use. Such a practice creates a fate. The son is capable of taking charge of the household is a metaphor for a person's consulting the sage in a sincere attitude. It reflects that the person's true self is taking charge of his personality, the household. This line can also apply to the person who holds the idea of the collective ego that it is the man's duty to be responsible for the woman. Such an idea puts a spell both on the man and on the woman for whom he believes himself to be responsible. By taking on this responsibility, the man excludes the helpers that withdraw, leaving him to do it all by himself. Thus, he has put himself in the prison of false duty by making the woman dependent on him. Phrases connected with the spell are, women are weak and need to be taken care of by the man. And if there were not men to protect them, they would be taken over by other men. These phrases are accompanied by corresponding images of a man's duties. In a broader sense, this line refers to the folly of the human-centered presumption that the world is mankind's personal household and that humans are in charge of managing it. This idea is the basis of all hierarchical systems and of the presumption that humans are superior to nature. Women, in this line, is a metaphor for all the aspects of nature a person considers as lesser, which ideas have also separated him from the cosmic whole. Receiving this line is a signal that his feeling of helplessness stems from feeling unequal to the self-imposed challenges of life. Without the aid of the helpers, he is. He is. He may remedy the situation if he asks for help to rid himself of mistaken beliefs that separate him from the cosmic whole. This line also calls attention to human-centered beliefs that people commonly have about fate. An example is the person who believes he is chosen either by God or some human authority to administer deserved fate to others. Another is the idea that a person has the ability to control his own fate. Another mistaken idea is that a person needs to pay restitution for his wrong deeds. Fate can be extinguished by ridding itself of the mistaken ideas and beliefs that have caused it. Line 3, take not a maiden who, when she sees a man of bronze, loses possession of herself. Nothing furthers. Yeah, can see that one. The man referred to by this line is a metaphor for a person who is looking at the sage or human master, the man of bronze, to make his decisions for him. Nothing furthers refers to the sage's retreat in the face of this attitude. Developing the true self means learning from the sage how to access and follow one's own inner truth and to listen to one's senses. The correct task of the human teacher is to help the person communicate on his own with the sage, not to take the sage's place. As for the person who poses as a spiritual master, he is really a swindler who has falsely put himself in the place of the sage. Wow, how many of those people do you know? How many of those, like these new age people, do you know who are doing that? Wow, they're swindlers. That's saying they're swindlers. That's crazy. That's awesome. Seed phrases connected with this line are spiritual development means finding a human spiritual master and submitting oneself to him or her. Another is I don't have any resources in myself that I can trust. These and like phrases create spells that need to be broken. The line can also indicate a person who, on seeing a potential partner with wealth or like advantage, wants to marry or follow him or her. The person is thus ready to throw his true self away in exchange for being taken care of. In all unequal relationships, one partner throws his true self away to the ego in the other. The person who does this allows that ego to feed on his life force, thereby depleting it. Line 4, entangled folly brings humiliation. Entangled folly refers to a person who is experiencing a fate. The fate has been caused by a mistaken belief which has put a spell on his common sense so that he is blocked from hearing what the sage wants to tell him. He therefore reads in the lines of the I Ching only what he wants to hear. While in the self-induced spell, there is no way for the sage to communicate the cosmic truth to him. So there's no choice but for the sage to leave him to follow his own chosen path until the mistaken belief is burned out. If, however, he heeds the message the sage is giving him through this line and is willing to identify the mistaken belief and free himself of it, his fate can be extinguished. Entangled folly often refers to a person's holding the belief that death is an adverse fate to which we're all doomed. This belief denies that death is a transformation that allows life to continue in another dimension. Seeing death as an end thus throws a dark shadow on his whole life. His belief keeps him trapped in the desire to overcome death through spiritual development, which by definition denies the joys of life in a body. Fate created by this belief is precisely that of being denied the joys and fulfillment of experiencing life in a body. This line also wants to make the person aware that his fate can be extinguished if he will rid himself of the mistaken beliefs that has put a spell on his life in this body. Entangled folly also refers to hopes upon which a person has placed his dependence. These hopes come from the ego and are based on the belief that if I only work hard enough, persevere long enough, am a good enough person, etc., I will get what I want. This ideal fails because it denies that all creative activity occurs through a partnership with the helpers. When the person thinks of himself as the one who creates, he blocks the helpers. Line 5, childlike folly brings good fortune. In its positive meaning, childlike folly refers to the person who has an innocent attitude in which he sees the good that is possible in all situations. The key ingredient here is allowing things to be transformed after having said the inner no to what is incorrect. This attitude always draws the helpers that bring good fortune. In its negative meaning, it refers to the view of the collective ego that for his spiritual development, a person needs to seek out a human leader or master. The line can also refer to viewing the I Ching as a sacred text that can only be approached if one observes the taboos that have been placed around it. Among these taboos are that one can only consult it for important matters, that one needs to understand the interrelationships of the trigrams, that it is only a book for telling the future, that is a compilation of ancient wisdom, that it is a binary code or ancient set of mathematical principles, making it a mechanical system, which is not, that it was written by wise humans, denying the influence of the sage, that it is to be seen as one of man's great achievements, that one is not meant to question any part of its text, and that one needs a trained human sage to interpret it. These ideas present the I Ching as complicated, distant, and forbidding, inspiring the person who approaches it with awe and fear. They cause him to miss the fact that the I Ching is meant to connect with him through his ordinary experience. This is the opposite of the innocent, childlike, and simple way a person is meant to approach the I Ching, being free of preconceived ideas. And line 6, in punishing folly, it does not further to commit transgressions. The only thing that furthers is to prevent transgressions. This line describes the difference between what the sage considers a transgression and what the collective ego defines as one. The sage views the use of power from its inception as an attitude of careless indifference to its overt expression as an act of encroachment against others as a transgression, both against one's true nature and against the cosmic harmony. This includes all uses of power that are sanctioned and even rewarded by the collective ego. It includes as well those attitudes that arise from beliefs that place humans at the center of the universe. This line describes the kinds of folly that cause people to meet their cosmic limits in the form of an adversity, intentional transgressions of one person against another, transgressions against nature, animals, plants, and the environments in which other life forms live, etc. People's transgressions against their own true natures, transgressions against the cosmic consciousness or any aspect of it, including the sage, repression of cosmic truths by authorities, repression of the natural inhibition against killing other humans, wounding, or maiming, indifference to the suffering caused by blind obedience to the rules, commandments, and prohibitions of the collective ego, and the willful ignoring of cosmic limits. The only thing that furthers is to prevent transgressions is a statement that the adversities encountered are only as severe as they need to be to break through the obstinacy a person has in ignoring the cosmic limits and to make him listen to his inner truth. This contrasts with the self-righteous and vindictive excesses with which the collective ego punishes those who go against its standards and views by excluding and treating them cruelly. The sage makes it clear that it is not a person's job to punish another, but to say the inner no and retreat in the face of his transgression. He then needs to turn the matter over to the sage and the helpers for whatever else needs to be done to correct him. Well, that was hexagram 4, and let's take a quick look at the gene keys for hexagram 4, gene key 4. The shadow is intolerance, the gift is understanding, and the city is forgiveness. And really this, so I want to say a few things about this gene key. It's really, and the gift of understanding, it's really what our modern world has been built upon, this fourth gene key. It's in our neocortex and is part of the channel of logic in human design. And it's really how our brains, it's like that left-brained, logical, mathematical, scientific kind of energy, and that's why we see here the background of all these math equations and this artificial intelligence and all this stuff comes from the fourth gene key, in my opinion, and also relating with others, as the I Ching pointed out. And in the gene keys, Richard Rudd says this is a universal panacea, and that's forgiveness, right? Forgiveness of other people, forgiving debts, forgiving transgressions, and all that. So, and this gene key is going to be really, really important in the future, according to Richard Rudd in the gene keys. So keep an eye on that. All right, I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.